Got another edition of the High School Football Podcast, already in week 4. Seems like we're cruising through this season alongside TopDawg. I'm Braden Surprenant. Thanks again for joining us today on the podcast. A little bit of different setup for us. We did meet at Todd Durkin Studios yesterday. Had to finish off some other stuff today, but we had a pretty good interview with Miles Bailey, who is an official for the San Diego County officials, and got a lot of good insight out of him. We'll play some of that interview in just a little bit. But Chris, let's talk about week 3 and what happened and what stood out to you, and your overall synopsis of week 3 before we dive into individual games.
I think the overall synopsis is in week 3 or week 4, depending if you look at it with week 0. The theme of the week is they are who we thought they were. Now you can take that for many games. The Lincoln Mater Dei game, the La Costa Canyon Mission Hills game. A lot of teams went into that probably with a lot more confidence. And then, at the end of the night, when they look at the scoreboard, they get an L. So I think the theme of this week is they are who we thought they were.
Let's talk about the game of the week, obviously, and we'll talk a little bit more about this with Miles from a standpoint of some things that we heard about the game. But overall, Cathedral beats Helix 14-13. Some plays didn't go either team's way in terms of some calls. We saw it on social media. But, overall, it's a 1-point game in that game between two of the top teams in San Diego. What did you take away from the Cathedral Helix game last week?
Actually, it was a lot closer than I thought it was going to be. Obviously a 1-point game. I had Helix actually winning that game. But I'll tell you what, the pressure defense got to Ryland Jesse early and often. And, he had some guys that were open and he couldn't make the throws. And I think that's the difference between winning and losing. This game is a game of inches. And he missed a couple of receivers wide open or at least out of coverage a couple of times on a really good secondary for Cathedral. And that's the difference in the game. When you're playing, 2 Division I juggernauts and fast-league programs like Helix and Cathedral, you have to be 100% consistent the entire game. And I just think, the defense of Cathedral, I say it every week, John Montali is the greatest defensive coordinator in San Diego County. But he dials up that DC and that defense for Cathedral, and it confuses a lot of quarterbacks. And you saw that that night. I did think that the touchdown that was called a touchdown was a fumble. He did look like he lost the ball before he got into the end zone, unfortunately. But I didn't see the hold on the kickoff return either. So my takeaway in this game, sorry, Miles, probably not going to like this, but officials don't need to be part of the game or make the game about themselves. And so my takeaway is there's bad officiating. And I think that the officials played too much of a important role in that game. And there were a lot of inconsistent calls or no calls in that game. And I think it directly affected the outcome of the game.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate part, right? Was we've had that. And I know it was bad. I watched the game. It was there, obviously. And it seemed like a lot of the calls were not very good in a sense, and I knew it was bad when earlier this week on the talk show, we're talking about the Padres, we're talking about local San Diego sports. We got 3 phone calls to talk about the officiating in that game unsolicited, which I thought was surprising. That's the downside. The good side is we had about 5 high school football phone calls this week. Again, all unsolicited, which is great. Love the passion from the San Diego fans and talking about high school football here in San Diego. And, when you're talking about pro sports and there's people going, hey, man, I was at the Chula Vista, Hilltop game last week. It's great. It's great to see that a lot of local people are going out in their communities and watching high school football. But, I think when we get to Miles, I think a lot of it's going to be with experience, and the more experienced officials, usually have their control over the game in a sense where it's not about them, great communication, and that's what you like to see. But we were kind of expecting there's going to be some growing pains with a lot of guys officiating games this year just because they haven't had the experience. So it's unfortunate that a game like that had some big big time calls that were clearly missed that could have affected Helix winning and could have affected Cathedral winning, by maybe more than 1 point. But, it is what it is. I think everybody kind of expected that going forward. But another hard-fought game between the two. First time Cathedral's won at Helix since 2009. Second time ever they've ever won at Helix. And it was a hard-fought battle. And the other thing, too, with the Helix Cathedral games, when Cathedral wins, aside from last year, it's usually close. And when Helix wins, it's usually a blowout. So another close win for the Dons against the Helix Highlanders, who are now 9-7 against Helix.
You go back to last fall, and I think that was, 55-0?
It was 52-0. It was the first time Cathedral actually won by more than a single score. Or when they usually lose, it's usually a blowout. So, but it's pretty back and forth, pretty good rivalry. I mean, 9-7 for the Dons at this point, and it's kind of one of those newer rivalries that you don't see, non-traditional, two of the powers just that play each other every single year, and it's great to see. Hopefully you get to see it in the Open Division or D1 playoffs. North County Game of the Week, Carlsbad was a big favorite against El Camino. They scored 20 points in the first half, shut out in the second half against El Camino. Obviously, Avocado League game. Teams know each other really well, but El Camino did a great job. They lost 20-16. I know teams aren't going to appreciate a tough loss. There's no such thing as a respectable loss, obviously, or whatever the term is that I'm blanking on. But shut out Carlsbad an entire half of football. You were 6 points away. It's a pretty damn good job there by El Camino.
Yeah, I thought the D-line kept them in the game the second half. They just didn't have enough explosive plays from their receivers and running backs to get back in the game and take root. And I don't know if the Avocado League is what it used to be this year.
It's not what it used to be, but when you get to league games and you play the same teams over and over again, they're going to be hard fought, close, usually some pretty close games. And I'm expecting more of the Avocado League in close games moving forward. East County Game of the Week. We gotta give some. I know you got some shout outs for players for this team, so I'm gonna set them up for you. But Rancho Buena Vista goes down to El Cap, puts up a big 42-14 win. They were highly favored. This is the best start in RBV school history, dating back to the 90s. They tried to get a 4-0 start last year. El Cap shut it down. This year, RBV gets the 4-0 start, looking for a 5-0 start potentially this week, which would be, I think, the best in school history to get the Longhorn season off started right. And they're playing really well right now, Chris. I know there's a couple of players that you wanted to talk about on this Rancho Buena Vista team.
Really, the one player I want to talk about is the field general for the Longhorns, and that's none other than Connor Underwood. He plays at a smaller school, so a lot of people don't get to see him on the PPR. He's not at one of your bigger programs, but he's got college looks from a lot of Mountain West schools right now, looking at him to be their field general in the future. He, as of this week, he just passed the all-time school record for most passing yards in history for RBV. So congratulations to that young man. He had a great offseason doing the college recruiting trips. And like I said, there's several colleges interested in him. And it's good to see him having success this senior year.
Let's talk about the South Bay Game of the Week. Granite Hills goes down to Eastlake, wins 38-9. Eastlake now 0-4. Tough start for Eastlake. We know about a lot of problems that are at Eastlake. But let's talk about Granite. I mean, 3-1 now on the season. They're ranked 13th in the county in Cal Preps. I don't think they are as dominant as they were in the last couple of years, but a team that's one of those good, solid football teams here in town.
Well, and I actually want to talk about the Titans for just a minute. They're bit by the injury, but the quarterback Pomato, Sean Pomato Jr. over there, got injured in week one. Last week was his first return. He had to sit out 2 weeks because he had a concussion. And first play of the game, ball is snapped through his hands, and that kind of set the tone for the entire game. Recovered the fumble, and all night Eastlake had to be fighting uphill. And when you don't have the athletes like you're used to getting at Eastlake, and you've got a lot of injuries, it seems like week after week after week they're playing catch-ups no matter who they're playing.
City Game of the Week, Madison beats Ramona 41-7. Ramona, two tough games in a row, having to play Poway and Madison, both in Division I. Madison, obviously, one of the top 3 teams in the county. A lot of people have number 1 in their polls, number 2, number 3. I mean, regardless of where you got them, they're one of the top 3 teams, definitely in San Diego. 4-0 start, best start out of every team in San Diego, tied with a couple others, obviously, record-wise. But they continue to roll. I mean, they haven't been challenged yet in one game. They've dominated all their games. They got the great wide receiver quarterback combo. They got a good offensive line. We've talked about this team a lot since they all took their lumps as sophomores playing on varsity in that COVID season. Now as seniors, they're developed. They have experience with varsity experience, and they're proving that they're one of the top teams to beat in San Diego County and one of the top teams that might be battling for that Western League title.
Absolutely. It's going to be an interesting 3-way matchup between them, Lincoln, and Cathedral later on in the league play. But Ben Follow and Coach Rick Jackson have done a fantastic job bringing these young guys up, like you said, taking their lumps in the spring and in the fall of last year. And, these guys are battle tested. Johnson and Jackson is one of the most, prolific passing, receiving duos in the county. You got Barrett Rankin, one of the best linebackers. You got James Taval, another linebacker / running back. You've got the mighty Smurf over there, the kid that transferred from Point Loma there. He's running back with Tyson Bryant. You got a lot of guys with big heart that play on that team. And, it wouldn't surprise me if guys play beyond expectations. This might be Madison's year to do it all.
I'm going to list about 3 or 4 games that are of note, and then we'll get to those 2 Saturday games real quick, Chris. Mount Carmel beats Scripps Ranch 13-9. LCC beats Mission Hills 13-10, which I thought was a significant game. And then how about me cursing Del Norte, saying last week that they could potentially go 9-1, 10-0, and then they lose their first game against La Jolla last week, 27-20. Anything that really sticks out to you in those 3 games, aside from me being a mega curse and Del Norte probably cursing my guts out?
Mission Hills LCC. I got to give it to Sean Sobacall. Somehow he dialed up a special teams player, the best kicking game in the county because it looked like a kick out. Mission Hills just couldn't get in the end zone. The only time they did get in the end zone was a defensive lineman interception. It looked like the defense of LaCastacadian stifled the Mission Hills offense all night long. And so great job to Sean Sobacall and his defense over there. I think that's a huge win. Did not see that coming. Going in that game, I thought LaCasta was a major underdog. There was even talk that Mission Hills is going to be one of the top 4 teams to make the Open this year. That was a big shocker for me, losing to LCC.
That was a big shocker for me as well. Saturday's games, Lincoln beat Mater Dei, beat them down 56-20. And you got to talk about Roderick Robinson, 32 carries, 476 yards, 8 touchdowns, ties Jamal McClendon for most touchdowns in a game. I mean, the guy has put together some incredible performances and added another, feather in his cap with a big win over Mater Dei. Mater Dei, obviously, with the schedule that they've had, they're a team that's, been banged up the whole time, but going into the season, we knew that Mater Dei team, didn't have as much depth as a lot of the big-time D1 schools, and they're kind of feeling that right now. But not to take anything away from Roderick Robinson, who could do that against pretty much every team in San Diego at this point.
Wow. Watching that performance on Saturday Night Live on KUSI with Bert and the South Bay guy, Bo Fertigue, I could not keep my eyes off the screen. I was glued to watching Roderick Robinson every single time he touched that ball. Dominic Nankill played his butt off, but the 2 defensive ends for Lincoln, they were after him every single play. I think he had 40-something yards rushing, but he ran for about 300 yards that night because he was just running for his life literally almost every play. The secondary I want to talk about for Lincoln, they are the best in San Diego. There is no doubt. Those guys can cover your guys for 3, 4, 5, even 6 seconds. And, Mater Dei has traditionally played where, their receivers are going to get open. And Nankill can scramble. Their receivers will get open, and they'll find somebody open to make a big play. But when you're playing athlete against athlete and Lincoln can run with those guys, you take away that facet of the game for Mater Dei. Then you add in a punishing 6'1", 230-pound Roderick Robinson legitimately runs a 4.7, 4.5 in that range somewhere. There was no stopping the kid. Seemed like every single time it reminded me of Lucky Sutton last year in the game against was that Orange Lutheran up north?
Orange Lutheran, he had 27 carries, 430-something yards, and 6 touchdowns.
And you get to see a performance like that from a young man. You realize, you realize really quickly how special that he is. Now, with all that said, the limelight goes to the key marquee players like the running backs, the quarterbacks. I thought Cal Chatham did a great job of managing the game and not, forcing turnovers or forcing passes that could have led to turnovers. But the biggest thing I was impressed with was the offensive line for Lincoln. They're big, they're strong, and they're physical. And that could be a challenge for, traditionally in the past, Lincoln hasn't had a very big physical offensive line. And these guys are young, sophomores, and they're strong. They know their gap assignments. These guys are really, really good. And so I think that may make the difference later on in the season when you play a team like a Cathedral or a Madison. In the past, the offensive defensive line, the battle in the trenches would usually favor the other team. And I think Lincoln's figured that out, and they've got some guys on that line that can give Chatham enough time to either find the deep receiver, somebody come across the middle, the bubble screens that Carter loves to call, or just hand the ball off to Roger Robinson. This is probably the overall best team that Jason Carter's ever had in his career.
Let's talk about real quick before we get to the top 10. I mean, add Roger Robinson to a list of running backs in San Diego County over the years that have produced Heisman Trophy winners and NFL players. I mean, San Diego has been a running back factory. Would you, aside from saying like calling a city running back U is kind of weird, but I mean, would you? It's hard to argue to find a better place, off the top of your head than San Diego that produces running backs.
4 Heisman Trophy winners from that Skyline area. So if you take the entire Skyline row with Rashawn Salam, with all the guys who won it, Ricky Williams, they all lived in that area. And Roger Robinson is the latest back to come from that area. And it wouldn't surprise me if he'd be in the Heisman candidate race some point in his college career.
Hall of Famer, NFL Hall of Famers in San Diego County. I mean, guys that have gone in the NFL and have done big numbers. Guys that even didn't really make that big of an impact in the NFL, but had great college careers. I mean, you go down the list. San Diego's done an exceptional job with producing running backs, and Roderick Robinson, one of the latest. Let's talk about the top 10, and then we'll get to our interview with Miles Bailey. The UT Writers Poll has Madison number 1 with 16 first-place votes, followed by Lincoln with 5 first-place votes, Cathedral with 6 first-place votes, Carlsbad with 2 first-place votes, then Helix, Poway, Mater Dei, Mira Mesa, Granite Hills, and La Costa Canyon. The one thing I will say, regardless of where everything stands, you got 4 different teams getting first-place votes. That's a big sign that's saying that it's wide open in the open division, Chris.
Absolutely agree. My top 10 is not going to be much different, believe it or not. I think the only difference in mine are the top 3. I got Lincoln at 1, I got Cathedral at 2, and I got Madison at 3.
I'm going to go.
But other than that, it looks exactly the same.
My top 6 are pretty much the same, and just like you, my top 3 a little bit different. I got Cathedral, Madison, Carlsbad, Lincoln, Helix, Poway. I think those 6 teams, really, if you really want to say it in any real order, actually, I think the 3 Western League teams are probably the best, even though I had Carlsbad 3. But anyway, those top 6 are the top 6, and after that, it's pretty much a crapshoot. I still got Mater Dei in my top 10 just because their 4 losses come against 3 teams in the top 10. I really think that if they were to go head-to-head, and I think it's tough right now because they're hurt. I still think they beat Ramona. I still think they beat Mira Mesa. I still think they beat Granite Hills if that in that particular order, if that was the case. That's the only reason why I still have them in my top 10. I got Ramona at 8 at 2-2. I got Mira Mesa at 9 at 2-1. I got Granite Hills at 10 at 3-1. But I will say this, I mean, I watched Mira Mesa play in person. They have gotten tremendously better since week 1, and they're really doing an outstanding job. So far this year. They got Scripps Ranch this weekend. I think they should be able to dominate that game. And, Mira Mesa start to go back on the rise. I know, Coach Thompson, he wanted to be back in the Western League as soon as possible. And, I had interviews with him in the past. You know him obviously really well. He wanted to bring Mira Mesa back to the days where Saints and Cathedral were playing for second place. And now, obviously, he would probably want Cathedral and Lincoln and Madison battling out for second place as Mira Mesa wins the top crown. But I think they're stepping in the right direction this season.
I do, too. I think Coach Morales has done a fantastic job since the passing of Coach Thompson. It's been difficult, I know, for him personally because of how close they were. But, on the football field, he manages to inspire kids and really get these guys fired up for Friday night games. He's got some great kids that really, really are coachable, and they're college ready.
All right, we have the time now for our interview with Miles Bailey. Chris and I caught up with him in the Todd Durkin studio earlier in the week. We had a great time talking with him, got a lot of good information and a lot of good stuff to pass along to you coaches and to players about respecting officials and what they're looking for, in games, so we kind of have a general understanding. We're all on the same page on a Friday night. So here's us with Miles Bailey. All right, TopDawg and I are pleased to welcome a special guest. You put out the call last week, and you're like, hey, any ref wants to join us, like jump on the podcast. So Miles Bailey answered the call. He's from the San Diego County football officials. He's out there each and every Friday night. I'm sure some of you guys...
Everybody knows that emblem.
I'm sure some of you guys have seen him already out there on the fields, but he answered the call. We want to talk a little bit about what it's like to be a ref. Anybody that's interested in being an official, we need a lot of them, and dive into kind of some of the things that I think a lot of coaches don't know about being official. So, Miles, thanks for the time. Thanks for showing up. We appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys having me. Thank you guys very much.
Let's look. We had a pretty good conversation going off air before. I mean, just so many things that Chris and I are picking your brain with. But let's just start from a standpoint of view. What got you into being a high school football official, and what are some positive reasons why you think others should kind of go down that path as well?
Decided to become a football official because I wanted to give back to the game. I loved the game being in high school. Wasn't good enough to continue, honestly, to go into college. I mean, I maybe would have made a JC squad, maybe. So I wanted to get back to the game, and I thought refereeing was a great idea, great exercise, great money, or I'd say good money. But, I mean, it's a way to give back. I'm out there getting exercise, the camaraderie. There's 350 of us in the association. So, I mean, nothing like going to meetings during the month and getting to see all your friends that have the same kind of interests you do.
Let's talk about real quick, Chris. When we're talking about officiating, becoming official, you talked about you played football, right, in high school?
Yes.
You said? Okay, so you're one of the guys that played the game, loves the game, giving back to the game. I think a lot of coaches sometimes don't know how many officials have played before. Would you say what percentage of the guys that officials have played the sport of football before?
I could probably say about 75% of the officials in our association played at one level or another.
No, it's good to hear, because there's a lot of times you're sitting there going like, "There's no way this guy ever played. This guy doesn't know anything about football." And it's usually kind of that common sense.
Well, also I want to talk about the stereotypes. I mean, the reality is, first and foremost, thank you for being a ref.
Appreciate it.
I mean, with this year, we've experienced the Thursday games and Saturday games because of shortages of refs.
Right. I've already played a Thursday game and a Saturday game.
And it's kind of weird because this isn't the NFL. I'm not used to seeing high school football on a Thursday night, and definitely not a Saturday night. That's college game night. So thank you for stepping up for our kids, for our community, for our coaches. And secondly, I want to say this. I apologize on behalf of all coaches everywhere that – I don't know. There's something about seeing a zebra that he's automatically not my friend. So whether you're a baseball referee, an umpire, or a referee in football, you get a bad rap. You really, really do. I mean, the minute you step on that field, I think that, 80, 90% of the coaches are already thinking, how's this guy going to screw me tonight?
Well, that's a bad mindset to have right there.
Well, as
negativity.
A coach, hey, I'm just being honest.
That's right.
The white hat's not your friend, and you get that bad stigma, and it's a special person that really is going to kind of know that, accept it, and go out there and do their very best. And there's not enough, obviously. I mean, but thank you for what you do for our kids, for our coaches, for the sport we all love. Now I'm going to hit you with the hard questions.
Oh, man. Okay. Here it comes.
I got to butter him up first. I know one of the rules we talked about was we're not allowed to ask about any specific plays.
Right.
So I know those are reviewed by the officials group there.
Real quick, though, before you ask that question, just for people to know, because I think a lot of people want to know, what's the process like? What's the review process like? I think a lot of people that watch baseball in particular always want to go like, oh, these guys getting graded on this. For you guys, after a game leading up to the next week, do you guys get a sheet of plays? How's the review process go? Because we talked about off air, you guys have your own film session too. Take us through what's that like for an official compared to what it is like for a football player.
It's very similar. Friday night we finish up the game, kind of have our own self-assessment. plays that we want to look at for ourselves, just like you guys. Just a play you felt you did great on, maybe a play you feel you missed. Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, we get the same huddle film provided by the school, and we get that sent to us by our liaison for San Diego County football officials. We take a look at it Saturday, Sunday. Sunday afternoon, Monday, we get clip breakdown from our white hat. He's gone through the whole film, picked out good plays, bad plays, things we need to work on as a crew. Those get delivered to us. We take time on huddle to look at those. And then about Tuesday into Wednesday, we start looking at film on the teams we're coming up with, to make sure that we kind of have an idea of what their tendencies are, and to look at just the matchups so we're, ready to go.
You have some type of prep of like, all right, maybe this school's going to ask, hey, pay attention to this. They did this last week where we don't think it's legal, and vice versa on stuff like that. Right? I would imagine a lot of it has to do, especially with RPOs now, linemen staying within their 3 yards that they have to stay and stuff like that, right?
A lot of it has to do with RPOs. Exactly. We normally get that more Friday before the game when we go to talk to the head coach. Normally that's when he's hitting us with your guys' questions about what the other team does. Around Tuesday when we get our film for the teams we're coming up with the week prior, we also get a breakdown of a couple of plays maybe from other games that we did well, maybe we didn't do so well on, but just points that we as an association need to look at and get better at.
One last thing before Chris is going to get you with the real hard-hitting questions here. How far in advance do you know your schedule? Do you get a full schedule like most high school teams and like, all right, week 1 I'm here, 2, 3, or does it start to differ, in the second half of the season when, maybe there might be some bigger games that they didn't expect early on in the season?
We get our schedule a few weeks out. It just depends on what's going on, especially now with trying to accommodate games getting moved to Thursdays and Saturdays, and just like anybody, we're all adults. We have personal lives.
Right.
We may have a crew set up for Friday, and one of those guys gets called out for a family matter or something, and now we have to shuffle the deck. Right. But we do know normally a couple weeks in advance where we're going.
All right, so we got the basics of, scheduling, film breakdown, what it's like after and leading up to the event there. So I know you got a couple of some ones you want to lay out there for them.
So, for me, first of all, I just think it helps to understand that the guy doesn't just show up and call a game.
Right.
I think that 90% of the coaches out there just think, oh, he's just showing up to call our game.
This guy just got off work.
We'll
he's just going to roll out. He's going to stretching in.
We were making jokes, off air about, the days where baseball referees would go to the trunk of their car and have a beer between innings. And that's how I grew up. So, it obviously, them getting graded and looking at film every week and getting film, of the new teams they're going to be looking at, there's a lot more preparation that goes into being a referee or a white hat or an umpire than I even realized. Right. So I think that the digital world, the invitation of Huddle has actually helped referees and our game become safer and more true to the game and the rule book.
Right.
With that said, I grew up in the 80s, and I can remember football before instant replay.
Right.
Right. And then I watched the evolution of the NFL fighting with replay and all the different rules, and to become, the red challenge, the challenge flag it is today. And every coach, and it seems like every coach and fan of a football program has a cell phone or an iPad or
especially nowadays,
or a Huddle, and they want to introduce that into the middle of a game. Hey, you missed this call. Look right here on my phone.
Right.
Hey, look right here on our screen. We've got this call you missed. What's that like, knowing that, yeah, you know what? You got me on video. I blew a call, but it is what it is, and we got to move forward. How do you handle that situation with coaches?
For myself, I can only speak for myself, but you guys are passionate. You guys are putting in all week, all off season with these kids. You guys are invested. So am I. I don't want to mess these calls up. So during the game, maybe isn't the right time. I'm not going to look at it. But it does go into my memory bank, and like I said, when I get that film Saturday morning, that's going to be something I'm going to look at. But then again, we have to take a rules test, a mechanics test prior to the season. We have to pass those tests to even be eligible to be on a varsity field. So it's also the aspect of, I understand what you think you saw, but how does that actually apply into the rule book?
Right.
How many times do you see where, a coach, maybe first, second year head coach of a program, sees something on the field and starts screaming at you about a rule violation, and you have to educate him or her nowadays on the correct interpretation of a rule? How often do you think that happens during the course of a season?
A couple times a season, but for the most part, again, I think we're going away from the old Bobby Knight coaching mentality where we're just being screamed at.
Yeah.
Okay. It is a lot more back and forth. As much as we're hearing the shortage of officials, which we do have, I think the coaches truly understand that this season with seeing their games get moved to Thursdays and Saturdays. There's been a lot more understanding amongst us as officials and coaches. Is there still times where coaches get upset? Of course.
It's football.
It's football. We're all out there. We're emotionally invested.
Right.
I love it. Nowhere I'd rather be on a Friday night than in the middle of the field with the linebackers.
Yeah. My last question, and I'll let Braden take back over. Last year I heard of something that I'd never heard before. And we had a kid that was, I think we were at De La Salle. It was the first time I heard it. A kid got flagged for hitting a kid too hard. Is that really a thing?
Without seeing the play, I can't say why the flag was thrown.
Is that really, like, he told us and he said he hit him too hard. And I'm like, this is football. Like, I don't get it. What do you mean? And so the kid was flagged. It wasn't unnecessary roughness. He flagged him for hitting him too hard. Is that even a rule?
I mean,
we're talking about Cathedral's Madden for Elmo.
Oh, like on was that against?
He's been flagged.
Well, that happened on Friday.
Okay.
And the explanation from the officials was he was late, and then on the replay thing, it's like you can make the case that he was there at the exact same time. But it's to me, I think it's transitions to an interesting topic, just with the way that it's officiated in San Diego. At least when our experience when we go out of town, how it's officiated out of town, it seems like in San Diego, any big hit is automatically going to get flagged, regardless if it's one helmet to helmet, which, by the way, I don't know how anybody can, with the naked eye, see some of those hits without replay like they do in college.
Right.
And two, it's just, let's just throw the flag. We're going to say it's late, because it's a big type of hit. When we go out of town and, it's almost like old school football. So I don't know if that's a point of emphasis in San Diego or what the deal is, but for you, as a guy that played football, loves football, knows the old school football, but also the new rules, how do you go about the physicality with some of these squads? And when it's unnecessary and when you think it's like, they're just playing football?
There's a lot of indicators. I think us as officials in San Diego are blessed. Our association is ran by ex-NFL officials and the state rules interpreter for the state of California.
Okay.
Our leadership is top-notch. We feel we're one of the best high school associations in America, not just the state of California. So, without obviously seeing plays, no two plays are the same.
Right.
I think the way we are officiating in the games is the way the National Football High School Association wants them to be officiated. And other associations don't get the luxury of having NFL white hats, state rules interpreters at their meetings every Wednesday to educate them on what they're seeing and what the correct interpretation of that rule is.
So what is the correct interpretation of the rule when it comes to those big hits? Are we looking for helmet contact? Are we looking crown of the helmet like they do in college for high school? What do they tell you should be a flag compared to what is just a big, nice big clean hit? Without going into detail of a play, what are some of the, the tells that they teach you to be on the lookout for in those situations?
Anything to the above the shoulders is a huge indicator for us. You can always lower your striking target. If you come up and the big safety wants to make the big tackle, lower the target. Wrap up. Are you looking to make a tackle or are you looking to punish?
That's a good one. See, I don't know that I could be a coach in today's day because, I grew up with guys like Steve Atwater and Randy Lott.
Well, it is hard being a coach.
As a safety, I want my guy to go in there like a missile and I want him to dislodge the ball, and I want there to be a physical punishment to a wide receiver to come across that middle. So, I mean, I don't know that you can do that with that rule that, are you looking to tackle or are you looking to punish?
Well, the thing that's interesting for me, and again, it's not the officials because they just do what the rules are.
Right, I agree.
But the way the rules are now, it's like anything across the middle and it's a big hit. It's like,
you're gonna get
what am I? And the answer, like you want to give officials, the question you ask them is like, what do you want my guy to do?
Right.
And it's just like it's either let him catch it or get there early or try to take out. The other thing too is that you're gonna say the guys. He said go low, which again, it's what the rules say. I'm not yelling at the officials for this, but it's like. You just see a lot more just knee injuries because guys are coming in super low. But that is what the upper levels have determined as they move down the rankings. So I find that interesting. A couple of things in terms of
some of those calls last year make sense now.
Right. I mean, but when
I say lower the target, I mean put your shoulder into his stomach and wrap up to dislodge that football.
Right.
You don't need the big blow up Atwater Lynch hit no more. Wrap up, come through, drive through that tackle, wrap up, form tackle, and drive him into the ground.
In all fairness, though, I mean, when I've got a safety sitting out there, and I've got a slant receiver, running a slant, or a slot receiver running a slant, he's coming across the middle, receiver's looking back for the ball, my safety's coming downhill. It's going to be really hard to correct myself in the minutiae amount of time they have to make that play, so it doesn't look like the kid's getting creamed.
The times the most that. At least that I have seen that we've been penalized on, are bang plays where the safety's actually going for the ball too.
Yeah.
And he gets there at the same time as the wideout, and they just go shoulder pad, and there's a big collision.
Yeah.
Which I think for the most part we see that, and when we have better crews, they don't call it. But when we have the young crews, they see big hit. They hear. By the way, coaches ask for it now all the time, as every offensive coach should at this point. And then all of a sudden you get the late flag, and then it's like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Right. So that's that. But again, that's not something that I have a problem with officials for. That's more of a rule book question.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like a lot of the things that I think some coaches get mad at, it's not the officials. It's the rules and what they were told to do.
Right.
I umpired Little League for a long time. It's not the same. But like there's a lot of things that are like, this is what they tell us to do. We have to enforce this.
I want to ask one more, and then I don't have an industrial show, man. Taunting. Taunting's been a big one the last couple of years, and we've seen the rules increase on taunting. What's your interpretation of taunting, and what's crossing the line to you?
Yeah, when is it celebrating their success, and then where does it cross the line where it is, rubbing it in the opponent's face, or like the unsportsmanlike stuff?
There was TJ McKay. I'm gonna call TJ out. He brought something to my attention with one of his tweets that I read. See, I used to have this belief that it's okay to celebrate your success. And kids would do that by saying, hey, I did this. I scored 4 touchdowns against the number 2 rated corner in the state. And I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. But TJ actually said on a tweet, he's like, if that's your job and you just did your job, why don't we just stop saying who you did against? And I didn't realize at that point it was, you're not celebrating your success. You're actually putting down another athlete. And so I kind of changed the way I looked at taunting slightly, because I used to be the kind of guy like, you hit somebody, you make a big hit, and I'm standing over you like.
It's the whole like, if you don't like it, play better attitude, right?
That was my attitude. And so now I think the game's evolved, people have changed, society's obviously changed over the last 30 years. I just want to know where that line is. That is, I'm celebrating my success versus taunting how bad this guy is, or how much I embarrassed him.
That's a good question. For me, just from a coaching perspective, if I'm getting my ass kicked and the other team's celebrating, I flat out tell my kids, look, you don't like it, you guys got to play better. I'm not going to sit here and whine that they, spiked the ball or they're rubbing it. And that actually happened against us a couple years ago. Centennial was destroying us, and one of their kids scored a touchdown, came over and flexed and was talking smack. And I mean, it was kind of out of line, but at the same time, my kids are getting upset. I'm like, you don't like it, dude, go beat his ass. Like, you got a chance, and they didn't want to.
This is kind of the National Federation of High School. Their note is, NFHS disapproves of any form of taunting which is intended or designed to embarrass, ridicule, or demean others under any circumstances.
I think that's fair. It's a fair
I couldn't
interpretation.
play. See, now I know I couldn't coach in this era.
Hey,
I
now
definitely couldn't
I'm
play
throwing
in
you
this
out.
era either.
Now you're out.
Here's
Right
here's
here.
the big one that
The game changed, man.
the 100%. But we're talking. This is NFHS that is made in Indiana.
They're in charge.
They're the ones writing the rules. And
I
under,
don't think football in Indiana is the same football in California.
The same football.
but we have state rules interpreters. Our guy is our
Those are rules.
in our association is our state rules interpreter. And one of the big ones that everybody, why can't they get up and first down? Great catch, Any delayed, excessive, or prolonged act by a player attempts to focus attention upon oneself.
I'm not throwing a flag for that. To be honest, let's keep the game going.
Really?
Let's go. Let's move. See, like here happened last week, freshman game. I'm watching the Cathedral's freshman play Helix's freshman. Quarterback for Cathedral rips off a first down, takes a pop, stands up, spins the ball, and I'm like, idiot. What are you doing? Flag gets 15 yards. This is when they're on their on a drive where they need to score to win. It's like, why? That's just so unnecessary, in my opinion.
But you're also talking that they're watching NFL where
Right.
you have
They are.
What's the receiver? The gentleman for the Steelers.
Oh God.
He gets up and points first
By the way,
down
he's not
under
in
2
football.
minutes.
Is he even in football anymore?
Which one are we talking? Dude, every receiver does
Brown.
that now. Oh,
No, not Brown. It was the
Antonio
younger
Brown.
kid. The younger kid for
Juju?
the Steelers. The third
Juju
one.
ain't
The,
got no
the other
more.
one that couldn't catch.
Washington.
Yeah, he gets, I don't know if that's the correct name, but he gets up under 2 minutes. They got like 40 seconds left. He gets the first down, and he gets up and points first down
Right.
and leaves the ball on the ground
Yeah.
while they're trying to run hurry up. And his whole team just goes off on him.
I want to talk just from my umpiring experience. I did it for like 15 years as a kid, going up through, side hustle some money. I would totally officiate if I didn't love coaching more. And I have done it before when we've been in a jam and we've failed to inform officials when games are going on, which is bad on our part. But anyway, when I was umpiring, there was a couple of times where it was like problem after problem after problem. The game just keeps dragging on, and then all of a sudden you're sitting there thinking like, all right, man, I can't give this guy a strike, and all of a sudden my zone starts to widen a little bit because I'm trying to get through the game. How many times are you in a game where it's like it just seems like flag after flag after flag after flag after flag, yet you're still seeing some holding? Is there any time where you're trying to sit there and go like, man, I really don't want to throw this right now, but I have to? Like, do you ever try to swallow your whistle in certain circumstances when the game might be out of hand and the game seems like it's going on too long before I get you in trouble?
No, I don't try to swallow my whistle. A safety foul will never be overlooked by me and by our association.
Not safety fouls, but just kind of like here and there. Maybe the guy had a hold late.
Can we turn it into a talking point? Then we may pass on the call. But it won't be at the point of attack.
Not at the point of attack, and not something blatant.
Backside tackle on a sweep away. Yeah, he may get talked to. Where you guys all see the hold.
Right.
We see it. It had no effect on the play.
Right.
It had no effect on the play. But no, I don't look at score. I don't look at we got to get ready for the varsity game. That's the coach's job. If the coaches are feeling the game's going too long, they can go talk to their JV coach and say, we're going to running clock.
Here's another thing that I've experienced before that I think, I think it differs per crew. Is it, at least what you're told, is it the official's job to keep games from getting completely out of hand in terms of you got a team on one end that's really good, let's just say. They're playing a team that they should destroy, and they're putting up 60, 70, 80.
Centennial Santiago week 0.
Right. Is that your job to keep the game close, or is that the coach's job to make sure it doesn't get out of hand?
It's the coach's job.
I agree, 100%.
It's not our job. State of California has a mercy rule.
Right.
35-point lead in the fourth quarter, it goes to a running clock.
Run it.
That CIF is like, hey, we got to help some of these teams out there. They're a little outmatched. But no, as an official, we're not out there to hurry a game up, hinder a good team against a bad team. That's not what we're there for. As much as parents, coaches, fans think, we're the one person, one crew out there that truly does not care who wins the game.
Right. God, I wish I had you every week. It'd be great. But, because sometimes, and sometimes I've even had some guys go, Coach, I mean, you're winning by whatever, as an explanation, which shouldn't be ever an explanation for any type of.
That's experience.
Right.
That's
I
where,
agree.
as an official, you learn how to say that without saying
it.
Is, I think, the best way. It's human nature. You're watching the little kid just get beat up. You might give him a little more. And I'm not saying as an official, I'm just saying as a human being.
Right.
But how do you tell the coach that without saying, Coach, he's just a bigger, stronger kid? That's why I allowed that to happen.
Right. Here's a couple of things, too, I wanted to talk to you about when it comes to officials. So I gave you my biased viewpoint on, as a human before the game starts, whether or not I think we're going to have a good crew. For you, in terms of meeting the coaches, what do you look for in a coach and coaching staffs and kind of the way the teams go, where you're like, I think we're going to have a good game here. It's not going to get out of hand. I'm not going to have any issues.
For the coaches, just the respect.
Just
and
be
like
respectful.
I said, be respectful to us. We're coming out, we're doing a job. You guys, every coach wants to win. They're not going out there thinking they're going to lose or want to lose. So they're going to sway the officials if they can. It's just human nature. They want them on their side to turn that 50-50 call into a 51-49. They have a 1% advantage, I really think San Diego is starting to get it with games going to Thursdays and Saturdays. We are one of the last states in the nation to do this. People don't understand.
Right.
Florida, almost all their big games are played on Thursday or Saturday.
Right. When I was in Texas, it was freshmen's on Wednesday, JV's on Thursday, varsity's on Friday. They had some games on Saturday. Youth, Pop Warner was not on Saturday. They played at their school on Monday and Tuesday. I mean, it was every single day there was a different day of football. And I think refs were probably some of it, and their love of football was probably the other part of that. But, to go back to some of these things with coaches in San Diego, overall, when you get, I'd like to know from your perspective as a guy that grew up or at least, went through the ranks here in San Diego, played high school football, has officiated for a long time. How would you evaluate the state of high school football in San Diego right now? From an official standpoint, when you see everything together, is it up from where it was? Is it down? What are the numbers like? Like, what have you witnessed of the last, 10 or so years in high school football?
The numbers are starting to come back. We did see a dip right before COVID.
Right.
And then COVID helped nobody.
Nobody.
I mean, nobody. It was, from watching it and being passionate about high school sports and watching these these kids become young men, right before COVID, I started seeing us really actually compete. I thought we could compete with some of the teams in Southern Section. And then COVID did us no help.
Right. No, I agree.
But I'm starting to see the kids come back. There are some monster squads as far as numbers go, where before, they could barely field a varsity team and have enough to go both, kids to be on both sides of the ball and run an 11-on-11 practice. Now you're seeing some of those programs have 35, 40 kids and even be able to field a JV team. So I do think kids are starting to come back into San Diego to play football, and
we've had the conversation before, Chris and I, the last couple of podcasts, where the thing that's lacking big time, at least when it comes to San Diego compared to the Southern Section, is linemen. They're either not here anymore or they're all at one school, there's just not enough to go around based on you being in the trenches, seeing it all the time. I ask Chris all the time, where did all the big kids go? Are there too many schools? Are they more thinned out? Or do we have big kids, we're just not in the weight room as much? What is the difference for you in terms of seeing linemen from San Diego County compared to linemen from outside of the county?
Sheer size. I think you hit it. Like, where are the big kids? I mean, your school may have one or two here and there. You just don't see the sheer size like you do in the Southern Section.
Right.
I mean, I don't know if the water's different up in Southern Section or what, but
they got armies of big kids.
They got big kids.
Centennial's got about 15 linemen that are all D1 size linemen. And I know they're a big school, but we got big schools too. The population of San Diego County is over 3 million. I mean, it's a big area. I know some of the schools are not as big, but you go back in the tape and you watch back and you think back to maybe when you were playing or before. I mean, it seemed like a lot of schools had big linemen, where now it's only maybe 2 or 3 have big linemen.
It's just the flux of where we're at in San Diego. I mean, I do see a lot more skilled players in San Diego now. We have a lot of athletes around. Just might be a down time right now for the big man in San Diego.
A lot of tall and skinny kids. Maybe, I mean, lifting. I don't know what it is, but it seems like we got a lot of, let's say active. I mean, a lot of the linemen are active. They're not like big, pudgy kids anymore.
It's a different lineman nowadays.
Yeah.
Anyways, it's not the.
They're all taller and skinnier, and then the ones that are on the very, very good teams, the big guys are just fit, kind of buff players. But I wanted to get your perspective on that real quick. Let's talk about pre-snap reads and just what officials are looking for. You can kind of go through your crew just so our coaches know and understanding when they give you that, what are you looking at, that infamous what are you looking at comment, just kind of a general idea. Because as a coach and as somebody that has broadcasted, watched, big football fan, I couldn't tell you what each official is responsible for.
Pre-snap read is different play to play based on where we're at, what we're doing. There is a basis of what we do every play. I'll start with myself as an umpire in the middle. I have my main goal is watching the ball, making sure the snap is correct. Then I have the guard on either side of the center. That is my number one priority for every play. I'm offset of the referee, so we kind of split the center in half. He has one side of the line, I have the other side. Based on if it's a run or pass, our duties change. We watch if it's point of attack or behind blocking, if the point of attack goes away from me more toward the referee.
We're talking about like holding, illegal chops, face mask, illegal hands to the face, stuff like that.
All those things.
So when you're looking for that, you're only because it's tough to look at all five linemen at once. So you have half the line, he's got the other half. What are you looking at, about two or three kids maybe?
That's pre-snap. And as soon as the ball snap and the play determines what we're going, we go into our run zone technique. And we have 4 zones, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 is ahead of the ball, 2 is the point of attack, 3 is right behind, and 4 is that wide vision, normally a flank official. When I say flank official, the line of scrimmage official, either the head linesman or the line judge, the one that's over with the coaches. They have the wide vision, so they're making sure everything behind the play is kind of taken care of, mainly looking for personal fouls, that kind of thing.
Right.
A hold behind the play isn't going to affect the play. That's where we do a lot of talking to. Coaches will scream, hey, look, the tackle held my D end on a sweep away. Yes, if it's not huge, we may just give them a talking to. But it'll be fair. Your kid's going to get that same warning, the same talking to. And if it continues, that's where it's the judgment of the official if they're going to throw a flag.
When you get into those situations, how important is it for you guys? Because it doesn't happen for everybody, because it's human nature to keep your cool and still have that same respect that you demand from the coaches to give back to the coaches when a coach might be getting a little snippy with you. How important is it for you to keep your cool? And have there ever been times where you've been close to maybe going, maybe I shouldn't have said it like that?
Of course, there's always learning experiences where you kind of make a comment, you're like, ooh, that's probably not the best way I could have explained that to that coach. In the end, they're invested in the game, and from determining who the winner is, we're not.
Right.
We do not care who wins the football game at the end. They do. So they're going to try to bias their wording, what they saw, to pull us as officials to their side to help them maybe get a call later in the game. And it's just one of those things, you got to keep your cool. I've said it and I say it again. If any of the kids that play or have played and had me as an umpire, I ask them to show me respect and I show it right back, and it has worked for me in my 10 years of refereeing here in San Diego. I've had numerous kids say how much they love being out there with me, other crews, how they love them. And I think that's what we're getting in our associations. We're starting to realize how we treat these kids. They show it back to us and the coaches as well.
Miles, I appreciate the time. Thanks again.
I appreciate it. Thank you, sir, for having me.
Thanks again to Miles Bailey for helping us out and taking the time. I tried to grill him a little bit. Chris coming to his defense a lot, which was great. Try to reverse roles a little bit. But, Chris, overall, I think we learned a lot from Miles Bailey and just how they viewpoint things and what they're looking for, throughout games and kind of that same thing that coaches want, the communication and the respect. And I think Miles said it best, that San Diego is one of the parts in the world and that it does a great job with that. And he said a lot of coaches are really embracing the level of respect that they should have for the officials.
For me, I think the greatest thing I learned during our conversation was the amount of preparation that referees have to go into
Film
prior to
watching.
film watching and being graded and having, clips sent around. And, you might be that guy that makes a bad call and it shows up on a clip that the entire association has to grade. So, there is a lot of, the other part is, I didn't know about 80 to 90% of the guys that are doing referee or, officiating are former players. So, for me, I think I'm going to give the guys a little bit less of a hard time when I'm on the sidelines and a little bit more respect.
And then the other thing too is when anything that we brought up in terms of some things that kind of looks bad on the officials, Miles was like, hey, it just comes with experience and learning and putting it together. Just like an athlete would hone their craft and get better with how they do coverage and do quarterback reads and how you run with the ball and stuff like that. So it's great hearing the film prep that they do. It's great that they're former players. They know the game. And every once in a while you get a bad egg, but same with the coaching staff that you have to deal with. But I thought that was great insight, and hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Let's talk about the games this week. We got 2 games coming up on Thursday. San Ysidro at Hilltop and El Cajon Valley at El Cap. Anything you want to address on those 2 games?
I'm going to take San Ysidro, and I think I'm going to take El Cap too.
Games of the week. Mission Hills at Carlsbad was supposed to be a gigantic game, I think, coming into this week. I thought it was going to be the battle for first place in the Avocado League. Now with the loss that Mission Hills had, still pretty good game, but I don't think, does it lose? I think it loses a little bit of its luster. Carlsbad is projected to win by 26 points, Chris.
I think they'll cover in that game. Like you said, I mean, they just lost. Mission Hills just lost to LCC. Hauser's not going to want to put up another performance like they did. I know they're going to have a tough week of practice in Mission Hills, but Julian Sain is that guy, and they've got a couple receivers over there that can really get separation from punters and safeties. So I feel like Julian Sain is going to have no problem with that defense of Mission Hills.
North County game of the week: San Marcos Knights 3-1 at the number 12th ranked La Costa Canyon Mavericks, who are 2-2, coming off the big win against Mission Hills. It's a pick'em game, Chris. If you're a gambling man, it's a 1-point favorite according to CalPreps for La Costa Canyon. I like San Marcos in this game. I think they win by a touchdown. They might win by 10 points. What do you say?
I say give me Jace Nix and the San Marcos Knights every 10 times out of 10 in this game. There's nobody in that secondary for La Costa Canyon that can carry Jace Nix. I'm expecting the kid to have 200 yards receiving, 3 tubs, and San Marcos wins by 14 plus.
East County game of the week: the Central Spartans, who have shocked the San Diego community a little bit, coming from Imperial Valley, doing a great job out there in the desert. It's going to come to East County of San Diego to take on Granite Hills. Central's favored by 1 as the number 10th ranked Granite Hills at 3-1 host the Central Spartans, who are 13th in the county and 2-1 on the year.
I'm going to take Central. They're going to keep the ball on the ground. The best way to slow down the Granite Hills offense is to keep them on the sidelines. And Central's really good about ball control, so I think it's going to be a low-scoring game, but I do think they'll have enough to beat Granite Hills.
I got Central in that one as well. South Bay game of the week: Mission Bay Bucks favored by 21 points to the Montgomery Aztecs. 4-0 Bucks. You keep talking about them every week, getting them ready to go. They keep putting through. Every time you say I'm going to go with my Bucks, they pull through for you there, Chris. They're playing a pretty decent Montgomery Aztecs team down in the South Bay, who are 3-1. Should be a good one. CalPreps does give Mission Bay a 3-touchdown advantage, though.
I got friends on both sides of the ball, but only one of them used to be my head coach. So I'm going to go with Coach Tate. Was the head coach of my Dago Dogs. Coach Tate is a phenomenal players coach. He coaches from the inside out. Love his approach with his players. Very even-keeled, very goal-driven, very detail-oriented. They're going to go there and have no problem with the Aztecs. The Aztecs aren't what they used to be.
Morse Tigers at the La Jolla Vikings is a pretty good city game of the week. Morse Tigers are 3-1. La Jolla is now 3-1 after another win last week against Del Norte. La Jolla is favored by 4 at home, but Morse Tigers got a pretty good rushing attack, and like we talked about before, they're throwing the ball a little bit than they usually do in the past. I like Morse. I like Morse in this game against La Jolla, Chris.
This is probably the hardest game of all the games we've talked about so far. These teams are very evenly matched and coached, and so the similar styles that they have as far as the coaches and how they coach their players. Tracy McNair coaches his players the same way the coach Roach coaches his players. there's no fight in either. I mean, there's no give up in either one of these teams. I feel like this is going to be an extremely close game. It's going to come down to a special teams mistakes or turnover. I think La Jolla edges them out 28-27.
We're going to go rapid fire here with the rest of the picks. West Hills Wolfpack is at the Mount Miguel Matadors. West Hills is favored by 14. I'm taking the Wolfpack. De La Salle is only favored by 14 at Cathedral. Should be a great opportunity for anybody that wants to go see De La Salle in action, the storied program against the Dons. They're very well coached. They're very well disciplined. And when you see the classic helmets that they have that they're notorious for, it's pretty fun to watch. So if you want to be in town, De La Salle, or if you want to come up to the game, De La Salle is in town. I think De La Salle probably wins this game pretty easily.
I'm taking the Spartans.
La Jolla Country Day Tories at the Coronado Islanders. Pick'em game. Coronado's favored by 1.
I'm taking Coronado.
Taking Coronado. Helix Highlanders are favored by 27 at St. Augustine, who's coming off a 45-7 victory over Steel Canyon.
I'm going to take Helix in that game.
I'm taking Helix as well. Valley Center Jaguars are favored by 2 at the San Pasqual Golden Eagles.
I'll take Valley Center.
And then Ramona favored by 12 at the Fallbrook Warriors. Kind of talked about this a little bit off the air yesterday. Fallbrook's having a pretty good season this year for a team that, unfortunately had to go through a lot of different coaches in a 2-year span.
I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to take Fallbrook over Ramona.
You got the Fallbrook Warrior. The Warriors are back. It's not too long ago the Fallbrook was playing in D1 title games. So it's great to see that their storied program is getting back and going, which is great to see. Anything you're looking forward to this weekend in terms of watching football, besides obviously being at Hoover?
No, that's it. Let's go Hoover.
Who's Hoover got this weekend? I forget.
I don't know. I got to check the schedule.
That's right. Hey, you're game by game. You're not looking out in advance. We got one game at a time. Wait, we just got to get through practice today, right, Chris? It should be a fun weekend of games. Again, thanks again for tuning into the podcast. We'll have more of it next week as we record on Tuesday and get it for you on Thursday. Another big thanks to Miles Bailey for joining us. It was great to get a referee's perspective, and a big thank you for Todd Durkin for letting us use his studio last week. Thank you to Odyssey as I am here. Thank you to Chris's house for hosting Chris today on the Zoom call. Chris, appreciate the time as always. We'll look forward to talking to you next week.
Absolutely. We'll see you next week, man.